Welcome to the Lebra Podcast, where education leaders explore the intersection of culture, strategy, and innovation in today's schools. I'm your host, Nate Lichte, and in each episode, we'll uncover the leadership habits, systems, and bold ideas that help districts thrive. Jason, thanks so much for sitting down and sharing your time with us today and joining the Lebra Podcast. Maybe for our listeners, if you wouldn't mind kind of introducing yourself and sharing a little bit about, your background, what led you into the superintendency and what really got you into education.
Yeah, sure. No, glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation. So I, my name's Jason Sutter, and I live in Sonoma, California, and I have a wife and I have 4 kids that have gone through our schools in this community. Uh, my youngest is now a senior, so she's about to exit our schooling system. Uh, and I start there because as I've been through education, I think also my experiences as a parent within the system has informed how I think about my work as an educator. So a lot of times I'm coming from that lens of how would I want to be treated by a teacher when I was a teacher, or a principal when I was a principal. And so that's been a great kind of touch point for me as an educator. So I started as I never thought I would have been in education because I was not the best student in high school. I kind of struggled to get over the finish line, but it's a pretty typical story. I had a teacher that in my senior year really made a difference and inspired me. And so I decided to go into teaching. I started out as a classroom aide in a special ed classroom and became a teacher, was a teacher for a number of years, became a staff developer. And then when I worked as a staff developer, those jobs sound so nice and you realize that you're away from kids. And that's why I got into this business. So I went back and became a principal. And that was a great experience. I think of all the jobs I've had, that was my favorite job because you have such a connection with kids and families, and you have this ability to make an immediate impact that you can see. Like you can see the see how the work that you do makes a difference in the day to day. And from there, went to the district office as director of ed services. I started there in the fall, and we went into the pandemic in that March. So that job shifted immediately into figuring out how in the world are we going to do distance learning. So was right in the middle of working with our staff in making decisions about how we were going to pivot into distance learning and try and still deliver something quality education to our kids. From there, our superintendent had an opening, and he asked me to do human resources. And my first response was, "That sounds horrible. Um, that sounds like the most miserable job. But are you sure?" He's like, "Yeah, I really want you to do it. I think it would be great. It would suit you." And I found out that I loved it. I thought I would hate it because it's working with adults, and a lot of times they're working with problems. But I really saw the value of being able to work to get people in the best people in front of our kids, and to help people when they're struggling to be their best for our kids, and when they're not doing what they should do, getting them out, making sure that we have the right people working with our students. So I learned a lot in that role, and it really was a great opportunity in disguise. I've known some people, like when I was student teaching, there was another student teacher that had this goal of, like, I'm going to move right up to superintendent. That's my goal. And I was never one of those people. Like I didn't have a plan of here's my steps to get to superintendent. I really just looked at what I want to do next, like what is the next way that I want to work to serve students and families. And so right now, the superintendency in my hometown of Sonoma Valley, where I mentioned at the beginning, that's where I've lived. I've lived there for 30 years. That came up, and the district has been in somewhat of on a leadership merry-go-round of just, I think our last long-term superintendent, Luann Carlamagno, left in 2000 2016. And since 2016, the district has, I'm the fourth superintendent that they've hired, and they've had multiple interims in between there. So teachers will tell you, I've had 9 superintendents in the last 10 years. Um,
Wow.
because they're counting interims. There's been a lack of stability here. Uh, so this position has come open multiple times and I hadn't applied, because I didn't feel that the timing was right.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that I really felt that I needed a sense for me that I was ready and the district was ready for me. Like the conditions were right for there to be success. And I did feel just this last fall when they posted that the district was in a place where they were ready for someone like me to come in, and I was ready myself professionally to meet the challenge that a district that's been in struggles,
Yeah.
like there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And that was why I ultimately made the decision to come back in and apply to work in this district. I had been a principal here years ago and left to become the director of ed services in another district. So not only had I been in the community, but I've been a principal here for 6 years. I knew a lot of the people in the district, and I think to dive a little deeper, the reason that I didn't feel the district was ready earlier was there had been a sense of this small town district that we need someone from the outside to come in and fix us. Like they were on the district had this was in this place where they were consistently bringing people in and not feeling like the leaders or whether it was teacher leadership or administrative leadership, that the leadership that was within our system was good enough. That we're looking for someone outside to solve our problem, someone outside to come in and say, oh, this is what you need. We can get things shaped up. Um, and we saw that's why they went through, 3 other full-time superintendents that were, each of them were no longer than 2-year terms, one of them less, because they were looking for that outside expert to come in and say, here's what you need. And we could see that it wasn't a match.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to dive into this a little bit deeper here in a moment. But before we do that, maybe can you tell us a little bit more about your district and kind of the demographics that make it up, a little bit introduction to the community, just so people who maybe aren't familiar with it have a little background.
Yeah, sure. So we're Sonoma Valley, and people that are in Northern California have heard of Sonoma County. So there is Sonoma County, which is larger. Sonoma Valley is in the town of Sonoma, a small part of the county, and our district is about 3,000 students. Right now we have one high school, we have one middle school, we have one continuation high school, and then we have 4 elementary schools this year. We're going down to 3 next year. So we're in the process right now of consolidating. um, we have approximately uh, 70% of our students are Latinx. Most of the rest of our students are white, and a very, very small percentage of students of other races. And about we're about 25% of our students are English or multilingual learners. So that's a little bit of our demographics and our size. Um, and it's a very, as you can imagine, it's a small community. I mean, it's not tiny, but people here are known. Students are known by the community.
Yeah.
When I visit classrooms, I know people. I know teachers and staff by name. I know their kids. I might have coached their kids in soccer. Like it's one of those communities where there are a lot of strong personal connections for good and for bad. Like there's a positive side of that, and there can be the liability around that as well.
Yeah, so I imagine that makes, kind of it unique, not only living in the community, but being a principal in this district before, and then now you just mentioned coaching. So as you kind of took on the helm of the superintendent role to start to lead this. Talk a little bit about your first 90 days. What that looked like. What did you do? Because it's not like you were going into this cold. You've lived in this community for a while. You've taught in it. You've coached. So, is there anything you maybe did differently, than maybe other folks, or what? what did the first 90 days look like for you?
Well, we're only 75 days in, so there's still 15 more to go.
Yeah.
But no, the first 90 days. So, I did develop, I think many superintendents coming in develop a 90-day plan, and they share that with the board, and they have a plan of how they're going to do that. And so I did that as well. I feel fortunate that I started on March 1st. So they had an interim superintendent, and I was able to start March 1st because that's giving me my 90 days is at the end of the year where I can visit classrooms, I can see what's going on, I can meet people and connect. Whereas if I had started July 1, classes will be out. So we can now start to I've already been gathering information and start to make plans for next year and what next year looks like. So I feel really fortunate about the window that I began this 90 days in. Um, my 90 days is probably been pretty typical in terms of the design of it. I intentionally designed that my very first thing was to meet with all district like administrative leadership. So I met with department heads at the district office right out of the bat. I met with each principal just to talk to them about. I had a set of questions and asking them about themselves, about what's called them to that leadership role. Why are they doing what they're doing? And also asking them about what's been working well, what's been a struggle. What is the district or the superintendent need to adjust to be a good support moving forward. So just asking them questions and hearing from them and gathering that information. I quickly pivoted into getting into classrooms. I set a goal publicly so that I could hold myself accountable to get into every classroom in the district within the first 60 days. And so I did over 140 classroom visits, and was doing those with principals. It was great. Uh, part of that part of that I wanted to see what instruction looked like. I wanted to see our board has lots of ideas about how they want to improve student achievement and improve the experience for our students. I wanted to go in and see what is the experience for our students.
Yeah.
What are our bright spots? What are our areas that we need to grow? Um, and so that was helpful. But the other part of that was I wanted I wanted to be seen in the classrooms by our staff, not to be not so they can see like, oh, he's doing stuff. It was more to acknowledge what you're doing is the most important thing. And I'm taking time out of my first, like, I'm devoting a huge chunk of this time to coming in and seeing you as our staff working with our students, because that's the work. So I felt like that communicates clearly what is, what is valued. Because at the end of the day, the work isn't getting done in my office. The actual work of a school district is happening in a classroom and at a school site.
Yeah.
So I wanted them to know that that's valuable and their work is valuable and respected. And so I visited all those classrooms. I left, every classroom I'd write a handwritten note about something that I saw or that I appreciated. Uh, and I left that for them. And so that was a big piece. The classroom visits was huge. I did get through them all within the 60 days. I was glad it was right at the wire, but it worked. And then overlapping that, probably after about a month, I started also meeting with community partners. I got I got bombarded by all these community partners like, "Hey, we want to meet with you. Let's talk. We have great ideas." And so we pushed them into the second month just so that um, I pushed them into the second month just so I could really get into classrooms. But I met with a little over 20 different community partners over this block as well, just to connect, because it is a small community that really cares about this. Like, the schools are central to our community. So uh, there's lots of partners that want to be involved with our schools and want to do what they can to support our schools. So that was also an important part of this was meeting with our community. And then a big piece of it was just doing a lot of work with the board, like meeting with them one-on-one, we've done in the last, I think we're having a study session this Thursday. So in addition to regular board meetings, we scheduled 4 study sessions. A couple of those were on governance, just so we could be on the same page about how we work together. So it's been a full 75 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see that. And actually like getting in and kind of visiting each classroom and building those foundational relationships just to kind of, conduct that listening tour is so critical for new folks as they're getting into the superintendency. When you were looking at and visiting classrooms, you mentioned you wanted to learn what the experience was like for students, and then kind of also just observing and building relationships. Was there anything you found surprising now that you've been able to do that? Is there anything that was taking place that you didn't expect, or anything that you kind of observed from there?
Yeah, I mean, so one, like, yes, taking a step back, there was a lot about this job that was not surprising. Like I've been a parent in this district. I'm in the, I know people that still work here. So I, I will say, like, I knew exactly what I was getting into in terms of like with the work that needs to be done in the district. There was a huge disconnect between district administration and the sites, and there's a lot of repair that needed to be done. So there were a lot of things that were, yep, that's what I thought it would be. And a lot of the instruction and the experience in the classroom was what I expected. It was, and it's probably not dissimilar from many other districts. I saw a lot of variability between classes. I saw pockets of excellence and that were not sustained in the class next door. That students could have very different experiences from one class to the next, and that we don't really have a guaranteed curriculum for our students where we know that they'll be having a similar experience regardless of the class they're in. We're not there yet. So those were all expected. I did see some good bright spots though, that were unexpected. There were many bright spots that were expected, but there were a couple. There was been some work that we've done for our multilingual learners with some strategies that was great to see that was carrying across, between classrooms. Like I was seeing some coherence between classrooms and articulating up through the grades in our elementary schools with this particular program that the district's been working on for 2 years. So that was great, a great thing to see, that I didn't think it would have taken root as well as it had. And the other, and I saw some great math practices that have organically taken hold in both our middle school and our high school. That is another point of coherence where, like, that's something we can lean into and we can build on. Like there's research-based strategies that are really engaging kids in deep thinking about their math. And how do we grow that so it's not in these small pockets, but grow that across that math department. So we've seen some pieces that were surprising that I didn't know were there. And that was really cool.
Yeah, that's huge, and I think that's one of the biggest things for folks, like I said, that are coming into this role. Even if you're coming like yourself from within the community and district, those listening tours are still just as valuable to get in and observe and see where your bright spots are, where your opportunities are, and then start to figure out how do we kind of create the right infrastructure to support what's best for kids. I want to transition a little bit because you're also, you mentioned this, you're consolidating, you're closing an elementary school, and you've got a unique perspective because you're in the community, but now you're coming into a role where you've got to lead some of this. So when you're leading through a particular situation like this that has that kind of challenge, especially in a community that is so invested, there can be a lot of opinions and thoughts and things like that. Can you talk us up through a little bit of what you've been doing and how you've been leading through that change for the community in the district?
Yeah, no, I mean, yes, I can. I'd preface it with saying, like, again, 75 days. So, I'm coming in. The board had actually closed. So they closed last year. We had two middle schools. They closed one of our middle schools and they consolidated at, at the larger of the two middle schools. Um, so that was finished already. They did that last year, and the teachers started and the students started at this new school this year. Um, and I could see that we didn't do a great job of bringing these two staffs together as one staff. Like there's still a big separation. There's still a very much like the two schools in one building kind of mentality. So I'm thinking a lot about what did happen and what didn't happen that is fostering that sense of separateness between these two schools. The kids are great. Like I go on campus, I'm asking kids like, "Hey, how do you like this? You were at the other school, now you're here. Like, it's great. There's twice as many kids, and we have sometimes those quirky kids that like have only they had 3 friends. Now they have 7, it's a great thing because like people find their people when it's a bigger space. Um, so it has been great for kids. I think the adults really struggle with it, and I think that's often true that the adults are the ones that have more problems than our kids who are pretty resilient. Um, so when I look at, we're now closing one of our elementary schools, and the board had done that right before I came in, but we're in the process of, we're also doing layoffs. So we had to lay off some teachers. We are moving the teachers from that school into other schools. So there's a sense from people that are, there's a sense of those teachers took my friend so and so's spot. They bumped them out, which it isn't true. The teachers, like, teachers have a right to, we work on a system where there's seniority and they're entitled to a job. So it feels that way, but it's not how it's supposed to work. And and that has to be addressed, because otherwise we're going to get in a place where there's going to be resentment as teachers move in. So I think some of the things that I've taken away so far, and we haven't transitioned yet, so we'll see how the transition works when they actually move. But what I've taken away so far is I think it's really important to acknowledge the grieving that people have,
Yeah.
that's real, and denying that emotion. We're closing a school that has been a community pillar for 75 years. We have one of the teachers there. Um, she's teaching. I think maybe this is her 7th year. She's teaching in the room that her mother taught in for 35 years or something about that. Um, and that's a school where I was a principal. So like there's history there, and I think about that teacher and the amount of grief. Like, she grew up in that classroom
Yeah.
with her mother teaching, and she's having to leave that school. So there's a part where we have to be okay with grieving and the emotions that go with it, and not try and disregard them, but how do we feel them and move through them, because we have to get on the other side. Uh, and part of that has to be, we have to be okay with that, with allowing people to have their feelings and to be honest and truthful, but also listen. So just, it's trying to hold all of those things at once
Yeah.
is, I think, what my takeaway has been, is to not try and squish down, like, it'll be okay, don't worry about it. It will, but people are feeling what they're feeling, and people are losing their jobs because we're laying off. Like, all of those are big deals. So um, being okay with that part of it, and also trying to be proactive about how do we support people as they move. I think got down to the specifics of how do we go into negotiate the effects of our layoffs and our transition in a way that centers dignity and respect
Yeah.
for the people that are having to move. And we came to really reasonable, good agreements that support our teachers, because I think we're coming from the right perspective of like, yeah, this is a big deal, and let's talk about how we take care of our teachers as we transition uh, in a way that does, like,
Yeah.
center dignity and humanity. So that's, I think, we'll see how it goes. Like, you could ask me in September, like, how's it going with this transition? We'll see, but I feel we're in the right spot.
Yeah.
We're in the right spot, given, like, it is a big deal.
I think what you said there is really important for folks in districts that are going through something similar, about giving people the opportunity to grieve, especially when you contextualize it with the story of the teacher that her mother was teaching in the same class. Like, we don't always think about those implications, and part of me is like, maybe that's a little bit of your HR background and experience that you've had there to kind of frame that as leading through that sort of challenging piece. And I think it's really important to give people, like you said, the space to do that, but also, that helps to build trust in you as the leader, right? To kind of give that space. Um, can you talk to me a little bit more? Because I think that's unique, and there's some nuances there about how else, when you're leading through this challenge, um, you're building trust. Because right now, when you're in your first 75, like that's the most important thing, right? Is
Yeah.
to kind of do that. What else are you doing?
In terms of building trust,
Yeah.
um, in general or with this transition?
Maybe both. I mean, if there's anything that
Yeah.
stands out.
Well, I think that I do have the benefit of being known in the community,
Yeah.
and having been a principal and having lived here, many of these teachers taught my kids, especially at the middle school and the high school. Um, I had the benefit of coming in as a known quantity, and so I had some inherent trust already built up. So people came in and said, "Oh, we're so glad you're here." Like there was this feeling of one of our people that cares about our community, not
Yeah.
in the abstract. Because I think the superintendents that were here before, I know that that, uh, they're probably wonderful educators and people that care about kids. Um, but when I came back here, like these are my community. These are my people. So the caring isn't abstract. It's very personal in terms of that. Um, so I think that I was fortunate in having already some trust extended based on just the relationships. Uh, and we've also been intentional about trying to connect the visits in the classrooms like that made I got many emails saying thank you for the card. That really was I can't believe that you wrote cards to all of us teachers. Thank you so much. The we've been trying to recognize, for example, when it was conference week, that's sometimes stressful for our teachers. We brought little baskets of snacks for the schools in the staff room just to say thanks for all your work. It's Teacher Appreciation Week last week and our classified staff appreciation week next week. So right in the middle, we brought baskets of snacks to all the food and sent them an email, just about appreciating their work and please enjoy a snack. Just trying to recognize them
Yeah.
and recognize the work rather than taking it for granted. And also trying to bring some joy into this. So we last week was Teacher Appreciation Week, so we were doing virtual raffles where it was dumb. Like we were giving away a Starbucks gift card or something, but we would go into classrooms and it was literally 60-second videos that we were sending out to the staff of like we're doing a raffle, we're giving this, kind of trying to just bring up excitement and interacting with students, and the teachers liked it. They said thanks for bringing some joy back. So just sometimes it's the little things that people really appreciate. Just just a little bit of the personal touch and some bringing some humanity into the work because I think that's gone a long way for staff. The first things um, that really kind of this was shocking to me was I think my second week in, one of our long-term educators that had retired, he was a teacher that worked with me when I was at the principal at the school. He had been an educator for a long time, over 30 years, and he passed away. And so I sent out an announcement to the staff just about, it was personal and I knew this person so I could say some stuff about them. And I listed when the setting was going to be just because he knew so many people in our district. Um, and I got many, many emails back saying, thank you so much. It's been so long since we've had this kind of a personal touch and acknowledging our staff. And it just, that part, I mean, I was, I was glad that it made people feel good, but I was sad that we were in that place where it was not the norm
Yeah.
that we would recognize the passing of one of our own that had been with us many, many years. So
That really speaks to, you mentioned earlier the kind of, the transitions that the district has been through and the implications on the community. And our teachers and our folks, they get so bought into the passion of the work and doing what's best for kids, right? Like they just kind of they they may not be as resilient as kids are, um, but to a certain extent over long periods of time, they kind of adjust and become accustomed to our leadership and our cabinets and the different folks that are supporting them. but that really connects to the culture. And so, um, you mentioned a couple of things just there that I think is really interesting for, as you're entering a new district, one of the roles of the superintendent is to really be the leader and the shaper of that cultural vision, right? And, for someone like yourself who's in their first 75 days, 90 days, whatever it is, it's kind of hard to figure out how you find opportunities to make intentional cultural impacts, right? And you already mentioned a couple that I find fascinating. One is this recognition, right, of just a key pillar in the district that has, passed, but then you've also mentioned handwritten cards and things like that. Those intentional moments really are what drives that culture. As you've been doing these listening tours and everything else, is that kind of in the back of your mind, or is it just kind of second nature, or, as you know, creating a strong culture of belonging, has that been also something that when you took the role, you knew that you wanted to, kind of create? Talk to us a little bit about like your cultural strategy, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's part of it is intentional, and part of it is just trying to bring who I am into this role. Like I'm I'm not coming into this role. I don't know if people do this or not, but I'm not coming into this role thinking like, okay, well now what would a superintendent do? Like what is the right superintendent choice here? Um, I'm thinking what do I think is the right choice? Like what would Jason do? Um, you know what I mean? So I think when I think about culture, I believe in collaboration in the true sense that I don't think none of us have all the like we're so much smarter together than we are alone. So I look at some of the initiatives this district has brought forward in the last couple of years that have kind of stumbled or failed. Um, they're doing it from the top down, and there's no buy-in because we aren't working together. Have we talked to the teachers that will implement this about what the rationale is, and doing troubleshooting on how that plays in? And when we don't, like, it inevitably I've always found it inevitably struggles, and I don't wanna be part of a district where it is that kind of positional hierarchy,
Yeah.
where you'll do this because I'm the superintendent and I said so. I wanna work in a culture where we all are contributing together, like, we all have an interest, like, we're on the same team. I always think about when I'm facing these situations, like, how do I draw the circle around all of us? How do we draw that circle? Because we all want the same thing. We want really good classrooms for our students. Like, we want them to just thrive and feel like they're in the very best place and they're growing as humans. And almost every that there might be a few exceptions, but I haven't met them yet, of people that's what everyone wants. If you're in schools, that's usually why you're in schools. So how do we have build a culture where we're working together? So that does go back to make am I checking in with my labor partners? Am we having really transparent conversations? Are we trying to work together towards the same end? So I think I do think about it intentionally, but it's also something that just is the way that I function as a person, and it's representative of the organization that I want to be part of. I really think about it that way.
Yeah. And I think again, it goes back to kind of, you know, when I mean, you live in the community, you have kids in the district, you've been a principal in the district. It's different. And I think that speaks to the importance of for aspiring and entering superintendents. If you're moving into a community that you're not familiar with, it's so important to, fully embrace every part of that community so that you can really have that in the collaboration efforts that come after the 90 days, right? Like, I think that's so important. Which I guess leads me to kind of my final question, because so much of what we've talked about has been advice and things that you've done in your first, 75 days here. What, this year we have the largest number of superintendents in their first year, and a large number, thankfully, of aspiring superintendents and people who are considering this as a path. Based on kind of your experience coming up in your first 75 days, what advice would you give to those folks that are considering the superintendency as maybe their next step?
If you're considering superintendency as your next step, my personal advice would be make sure that you want that you're if you're applying for that community, it's a community that you really want to serve. Like if you're doing it just because you want to be a superintendent, if you want that title or that pay, like the work is too hard to do that if you don't feel drawn to that community. I think that that is so. Do you need to do your homework? You need to know what you can know from the outside about that community, and make sure that you feel prepared and that you do feel drawn to it. A lot of this work is putting our hearts into the work. Uh, it asks a lot of us on many levels, and so I would just recommend making sure that anyone feels drawn to the place where they're applying.
Yeah. I love the way you phrase that. Make sure that you want to serve that community. Well, Jason, thanks so much for sitting down with me, sharing all the important work that you're doing, and sharing more honestly just kind of what it's looked like, in this first block of time. Hopefully, we'll get to have you back on maybe this time next year, and we can kind of talk. What does the first year look like? That would be, I think,
Yeah,
exciting conversation.
yeah, I love it. Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity. It was great talking with you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jason.